Hi guys, if you knew how many outtakes this video had, I assure you it's quite shocking. I've tried this on 3 different cameras, my actual camera, the camera on my iPhone, and as a last resort, my webcam, which doesn't always work. Sometimes the microphone doesn't work or the sound comes at a different time to the actual recording. But let's hope that everything works out this time, because I've not been able to upload the other videos, although one of them is still uploading. It says it has 51 minutes left, so we'll see about that one. But this video is for Wesley and Vrak, who both wanted to hear what I sound like with my real voice, as opposed to my fake voice, my stolen from someone else's voice. I don't know. Anyway, I get so easily distracted that I've tried making different videos where I've just talked for 10 minutes about absolutely nothing. So I'll try to stay on topic for this video, but watch me get about 5 minutes in and just go, oh fuck it, and just stop the video and try and make it again, because I'm not very good at this, unfortunately. I don't make videos very often. I haven't actually made one for Tumblr in over a year, I think, so I'm out of practice. I have my faithful glass of water here as well, so in case I get thirsty, which I am actually kind of thirsty now, so okay. This was something that Vrak wanted me to talk about, which is Orifer and his family, my headcanons about them. So I'll get started with that. I realised that my headcanons are maybe a bit strange, and I'm sorry if they don't align with yours. So yeah, okay, so basically Orifer is the brother of Nimloth in my headcanon. So they're the children of Galathil, who is Celebron's brother, and their mother, I referred to her as Lindis because I think that this was a different name that Tolkien considered for Nimloth at some point. At least I think I read that somewhere. It's just stuck anyway. So she is a Nando, a green elf in my headcanon, which I think she is. I think that's kind of a fanon thing, actually. I think several people have said that, except mine is slightly different, because in my headcanon she's actually the sister of Cyros, which I know might be a bit strange to some of you. I don't know, but in my headcanon Ithilbur and his wife have 3 children, a son who I haven't named for a start, because I imagine that their names, they have different Nandarin names to the names that they used once they moved to Doriath. So they have a eldest son, and then Lindis is the middle child and Cyrus is the youngest. I think their oldest child probably stays with his parents in the area of Doriath that has been sort of designated for them. Cyrus, as we know, becomes part of the Council of Thingol in Menegroth. And in my headcanon, Lindis marries into the Sindrimura family to sort of integrate the guest elves who have sought refuge in Doriath with the Cinder, or Cinder, depending on how you prefer to say that. And now my hair's just going to slowly cover my face here. Yeah, so, do you mind, phone, not interrupting me? See, this is what I mean. Things start to distract me. Anyway, so after Lindis and Galathil get married, I think that they would stay in Menegroth for a while, but after some time, Lindis isn't really very happy there, so they for her to move back to Linden, to live with the other green elves who were left there, who didn't come to Doriath. So I think that Nimloth and Orifer were probably born in not in Doriath itself, but for a long time this was kind of a roleplay thing that came about. Like, I used to roleplay Celeborn, and this was just a thing that came about between me and my Orifer that I had. And if you're watching this, hi. That Orifer had been raised in part by Celeborn, and that saw him as a sort of a second father figure. I'm not used to using my voice this much, honestly. I get so thirsty. Okay, so how I have come to explain that is that because Orifer and Nimloth weren't born in Menegroth or in Doriath, their father nevertheless wanted them to have an Aethrim or Menegrothian, possibly, upbringing, so that they were sent to be fostered with their paternal uncle, Celeborn. So they are, in fact, very close to him. I think especially Orifer is probably, in fact, more close to him than his actual father in some respects, at least while he was young. And I think that as he got older, Orifer... sorry, I got tripped over my words there really badly. Orifer moved to Menegroth permanently, and Nimloth, however, stayed living in Linden, which is how later on she came to meet Luthien and Beren and Dior. And then moving on to Orifer's wife, I tried to explain how Thranduil could have golden hair. I know that The Hobbit was written before Tolkien's lore had really evolved, so at that point the whole idea of golden hair being associated with the Vanyar probably hadn't come about at that point. Now I know that there are probably some instances of like silver hair. We know that silver hair sometimes appears in the Noldor because Miriel has silver hair, so it is definitely possible that the Cinder could have some people with golden hair, probably because before the Great Journey, when they lived at Cuvin I have no idea how to say that. You know what I mean, anyway. Cuivinen, I think. Something like that. They'd had mixing between the different groups at that point, so that can explain, random occurrences of golden hair. However, the way that I tend to explain it, and this just because, I don't know, this is something that appeals to me, I guess, is that Thranduil's mother was actually from Nargothrond and was one of Finrod's court, a member of his court, and that Orifer met her visiting Nargothrond, possibly with Galadriel and Celeborn at some point. I know that in canon, Orifer dislikes Galadriel, or he doesn't like the Noldor in general. I think that this is... I think I'm kind of ignoring this part of canon, really, because it doesn't exactly fit with my ideas about Orifer. I think my view is pretty much that Orifer has issues with the Noldor and with the Cinder, even though he is in fact a Cinder himself after the First Age, because he's endured so many different traumas. The sack of Menegroth, the second and third kinslayings, and I think at that point, also obviously the War of Wrath, I think at that point he just wanted to remove from all of the sort of, I would say, kind of political drama and that kind of thing that he'd associated with the Noldor and the Cinder, and just kind of go back to having a what he probably viewed as a simpler life with the Sylvan Elves. So I don't necessarily see it as him just always hating the Noldor from the beginning. I think that Finrod and the other Arafinwëans had received the approval of Thingol, who I think he would have accepted that as, well, Thingol approves, and obviously Celeborn, who is like a second father to him, approves, and Melian approves. So I think there wouldn't have been an issue there, and he wouldn't have had any problem with falling in love with and marrying a Noldor woman who, the way I would explain then that she has golden hair is that her mother was a Vanyar who didn't make the journey to Middle Earth. So her father is Noldor and her mother is a Vanyar. And they only have one child in my headcanon, who is Thranduil. And the problem with female OCs it's pretty much, it's kind of inevitable to eventually fridge them, because with any OCs in the Tolkien universe, it really is a case, especially in the First Age, of when do they die. What explains their absence later on, really. And I think it also explains, in this case, Orifer's personality, which I would describe as being not unfriendly, because clearly the Sylvan Elves chose him as their king, so I don't think that he's gotten a really abrasive personality or anything like that, but I do think that he's very withdrawn and likes things to kind of stay as they are. So I think the way that I imagine him, I can't imagine him having a wife at the time that he became the King of Greenwood. So I tend to imagine that his wife died in either, probably, I tend to imagine in the sack of Nargothrond, although it could have been as long as it was any time between then and the War of Wrath. So I'm thinking, it could have been the second or third kinslaying, it could have been the War of Wrath, any of those, really. Let's think, what else can I say about them? I think that Thranduil would have been quite close to Elwing. The reason I think this is because in my headcanon, obviously they're first cousins, and Elwing had just lost not only her parents but also her two elder brothers, and as her first cousin, Thranduil is one of her closest surviving relatives, and Orifer as her uncle is obviously her other closest surviving relatives. So I think that Thranduil would have not tried to replace her brothers by any means, but would have acted as a kind of older brother figure to her, and been quite protective of her, which is why that I think that they did live in the Havens after they left Doriath. So yeah, that would be because I don't think that Thranduil and Oropha would have wanted to leave her on her own as her closest relatives. What else can I think to say? I think I recently discussed this actually on Tumblr, that Thranduil's wife was a refugee from Gondolin who he met at the Havens, and I think they would have been friends at first. They've both suffered so much that I don't necessarily think they would have been in a huge rush to get into a relationship. Obviously things are slightly different for Elwing and Eärendil because at this point they're mortals, and as far as they know they're going to live an ordinary mortal lifespan, so there is more of a more immediate need to settle down and have children if they're ever going to do that, whereas for elves obviously the rush is not the same, and they are still very much at war at that point. They know, well, at least they would strongly suspect that the Fëanorians would come back to try and claim the Silmaril again. They know that Melkor at that point has almost or has in fact completely succeeded in taking over Beleriand, but they are not going to go down without a fight. So I think that would influence probably their decision not to settle down and get married at that point. So I think it would be in the Second Age that they would in fact then get married, although I don't tend to imagine that Legolas was born until the Third Age, so I'm not sure why they waited so long. I do think it's entirely possible that they have older children besides Legolas, even though that's not, obviously it's not portrayed in the movies. It does seem like Legolas is an only child, and in the books no other children are mentioned, but I think it is definitely possible that they have other children. I just haven't really come to think of that in much detail. I think actually it would be interesting, I don't know if this is contradicted anywhere, but I think it would be interesting if the Sylvan Elves have equal inheritance, so the eldest child, regardless of whether they're male or female, would inherit. I think it would be very interesting if Legolas actually had an older sister who would be then Thranduil's heir. I don't know, I think that's just an idea I'm sort of playing with at the moment. I may reject it. I don't have a problem with Legolas being portrayed as an only child either. I'm perfectly happy with that. My headcanon's already set in stone about this. So. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry, this video was really awkward in some places, like the part where I just kind of tripped over my words and coughed for ages. I'm so awkward, I don't even know. Okay, I'll just stop talking now before I say something even stranger. So, alright, thanks guys, bye.